I was standing in the attorney's office, my son across the table, grinning like he'd already won. He slid the papers toward me and hissed, "Sign it, Dad. You're useless now." What he didn't know, I'd already made my move. A hidden clause worth $2.5 million was about to flip this entire game. Stay with me. This twist will blow your mind. I've lived in the same two-story house in suburban Ohio for more than 20 years. The siding is weathered. The maple trees out front shed leaves every fall like clockwork, and the garage still smells faintly of motor oil from all the weekends I spent tinkering with my old Chevy. This house isn't just lumber and drywall. It's my life, my sweat, my anchor. Every mortgage payment, every repair, every nail I hammered with my own two hands, it meant stability for my family. I wasn't rich, not in the flashy sense. I worked as a mid-level project manager for a manufacturing company. Not glamorous, but steady. I paid into my 401k, kept up with the HOA, and saved carefully. My personality? Quiet on the surface. I've never been the type to scream or slam doors, but I calculate. I remember. And when someone crosses me, I don't explode right away. I wait and I plan. My son, Ethan, grew up in this house. He was smart, ambitious, maybe a little too impatient for his own good. He didn't want the slow climb I had. He wanted everything fast. Nice car by 25, big house by 30. He'd mock me sometimes for clipping coupons or refusing to buy the latest phone. "Dad, you're stuck in the Stone Age." I'd laugh it off, but inside, I store that away. Foreshadowing came years earlier, though none of us knew at the time. My attorney, Mr. Gaines, had drafted a trust agreement for me when I refinanced the house after my wife passed. In it, hidden among the boilerplate, was a buyback clause tied to company stock I once held. Barely anyone knew about it. I'd almost forgotten it myself, until Ethan's behavior started to shift. It was around Thanksgiving last year that I noticed a change. Instead of bringing pie and stories, Ethan brought printed articles about optimizing estate planning. He dropped terms like power of attorney into casual conversation. At first, I thought he was just showing interest in my well-being, but the tone was off. Less concern, more calculation. I remember that holiday vividly. The turkey was dry, the mashed potatoes lumpy, and as I poured gravy over my plate, Ethan leaned back in his chair, smirking. "Dad, you ever think about what happens if you can't handle things anymore? You know, like bills, deeds, medical choices." His words stung, but I smiled thinly and said, "I can handle more than you think." And that's where the seeds were planted. Seeds of doubt. Seeds of betrayal. But here's the thing about me. I might look tired, maybe even old to my son. But I'm not naive. If he thought I'd just hand over my rights, he had no idea what was coming. If you ever felt underestimated by your own family, stick around and hit subscribe. Because this story, it only gets sharper from here. The first time Ethan tried to test me outright, it was a Tuesday evening in January. Snow piled against the curb, and I'd just come in from shoveling the driveway. My back ached, gloves soaked through. He was sitting in my kitchen, jacket still on, a folder spread across the table like he owned the place. "Dad," he said, tapping the papers, "we need to talk about the future. Specifically, your future." I glanced at the header, power of attorney, durable medical directive. My name typed in bold. My stomach twisted. He wasn't asking. He was telling. "You've worked hard, yeah," he continued. "But let's be honest. You're slowing down. Bills, deeds, taxes. It's overwhelming at your age. If you just sign these, I can take care of everything. Streamline it. Make sure nothing slips through the cracks." I stared at him, dripping meltwater onto the floor. My own son, talking to me like I was some frail old man who couldn't read his own bank statement. I asked, "So I'd be handing over everything? My accounts, my house, my medical say?" He smiled. God, that smug little smile. Think of it as simplifying. The arrogance burned hotter than the coffee pot behind him. I didn't raise my voice. "Not yet." I just said, "Leave the papers here. I'll review them." But the disrespect didn't stop there. 2 weeks later, he brought it up at a family dinner with my sister and her husband present, right in front of them. "Dad's been slipping," Ethan said casually while carving the ham. "Forgot to pay his insurance bill last month. What if it had lapsed? He needs someone responsible to step in." I nearly dropped my fork. I hadn't forgotten. I delayed it by 1 day because the website glitched. But to him, it was ammunition. The humiliation stung deeper with the audience. My sister's raised eyebrows. My brother, in law sympathetic chuckle. I wanted to shout, "Do you think I'm senile?" But I kept my composure. Though my hand clenched so tight around the fork, my knuckles whitened. That night, alone in the bathroom mirror, I whispered, "He wants to erase me while I'm still alive." It didn't stop. Calls out hours. "Dad, you really should hand over the deed. It'll make probate smoother someday." Emails with links to estate planning blogs. Even a thinly veiled threat. "If you don't sign soon, Dad, the court might have to step in when you're not competent anymore. Do you want strangers deciding?" Competent. That word. Like I was already halfway gone. The more he pushed, the more he treated me like an obstacle instead of a father. Neighbors started noticing too. One afternoon, Mrs. Henderson from across the street waved as I brought in the trash bins. She leaned closer and whispered, "Your boy asked if you were thinking of selling. Said you might not be able to keep up with the yard. Is that true?" My jaw locked. Ethan was already circling the neighborhood, painting me as weak, ready to unload the home I built. I smiled politely, but inside, shame burned. My own son undermining me in front of the community. But the final straw? It came one icy February morning when I opened a certified envelope. Inside, legal language so thick it took me 3 reads to absorb it. Ethan had already filed a petition with the county court to begin guardianship proceedings. My own son, essentially asking the state to declare me unfit. I sat at the kitchen table for hours, fingers trembling over that document. The betrayal cut sharper than any knife. He wasn't waiting. He wasn't suggesting. He was moving to strip me bare, my rights, my house, my independence. I thought back to the Thanksgiving smirks, the dinner table humiliation, the whispers in the neighborhood, all breadcrumbs leading to this. And that's when a long, dormant memory stirred. Mr. Gaines, the trust agreement, the buried clause nobody remembered. My lips curled, not in defeat, but in the first flicker of a smile. Because Ethan thought he was writing me off. But he had no idea I had already written the ending. And if you think he stopped there, you're wrong. The real shock came next, was greed drove him straight into the trap I'd set years ago. The certified petition sat on my counter for 3 days, like a storm cloud I couldn't push away. Every time I passed, the envelope stared back at me, whispering that my own blood wanted me stripped of dignity. I should have felt defeated, maybe even scared. But instead, something else bubbled up, a memory I hadn't touched in years. Back in 2014, when the housing market was a mess, I nearly lost this house. Mortgage rates spiked, work slowed down, and I remember sitting in Mr. Gaines's law office, palms sweating, wondering if I'd end up bankrupt. He leaned back in his chair, tapped a file, and said, "You've got more leverage than you realize. Let me set something up just in case." At the time, I didn't fully understand what he was building for me. Some sort of buyback clause tied to the trust he drafted. It sounded complicated, buried in pages of legal jargon. But I signed. I trusted him. And then I moved on with my life, grateful just to keep the roof over my head. Now, staring at Ethan's guardianship petition, those words from Mr. Gaines replayed in my head, just in case. So I dug. I pulled down the heavy box from the closet, dust coated my hands, and flipped through old folders, bank statements, mortgage slips, tax returns. And then there was a slim blue binder labeled Revocable Trust 2014. I sat at the table with a highlighter, combing through pages. And suddenly, like a beam through clouds, it clicked. Section 8.3. Buyback provision. If any heir or family member attempts to claim guardianship or legal control over the grantor's estate, without medical evidence of incapacity. The trustee reserves the right to activate a mandatory buyback of assets, valued at no less than $2.5 million. My chest tightened. That wasn't just legalese. That was a trapdoor. A landmine Ethan didn't even know existed. If he kept pushing, if he tried to force the court's hand, that clause would snap shut. He'd have to forfeit everything. Any future inheritance, any claim to my estate, because his greed would automatically trigger the buyback. I leaned back in my chair, heart pounding. It was as if past me had reached across time, slipped me a weapon and whispered, "You'll need this someday." But this wasn't the moment to celebrate. I needed confirmation, proof, someone who could explain exactly how ironclad this clause was. The next morning, I booked a consultation with MS. Alvarez, a probate attorney downtown. Her office smelled like fresh coffee and legal pads. I slid the binder across the desk, my fingers trembling just slightly. She flipped, scanned, paused. Then her brows lifted. "Well," she said, almost smiling, "this is unusual. I haven't seen a clause like this in years. But yes, it's enforceable. Very enforceable." Relief washed over me, but so did something sharper, anticipation. MS. Alvarez leaned in. "If your son continues with this guardianship petition, he's essentially handing you the leverage to cut him out. Completely." Her words hit like a gavel. For the first time in months, I felt a spark of power return. Ethan thought he was tightening the noose. In reality, he was walking blindfolded into quicksand. That night, I poured myself a bourbon and sat by the window, snow drifting under the streetlight. I pictured Ethan's smug face, the way he'd smirk across the dinner table, calling me forgetful, incompetent. And I whispered, almost to myself, "Push harder, son, just a little harder." Because now, I wasn't the one waiting to be stripped of power. I was waiting for him to trip the wire I'd been sitting on for nearly a decade. Still, I didn't tip my hand. I answered his texts with short replies. I let him think I was wavering. Let him think he had the upper hand. All while the clause sat quietly in that binder, ready to detonate. But here's the thing. Ethan's greed didn't slow down. It sped up, and his next move, the one he thought would corner me for good, was exactly what triggered the past I'd buried to finally surface. And that past carried the key to ending this game once and for all. I need to take you back. Because to understand how I got here, standing in that living room with everyone looking at me like I was worthless, you need to know the truth about my past. See, most of my family thought of me as a failure. The one who never made it. The one who never measured up. That's what my sister Karen used to whisper at Thanksgiving, just loud enough so I could hear. "Oh, that's just Mark. He never really figured his life out." What they didn't know was that while I looked like I was struggling on the surface, I was building something they couldn't even imagine. Let's rewind 15 years. Back then, I was broke. I was working 2 jobs, loading trucks at a warehouse during the day, driving Uber at night. My back ached constantly, and I barely had enough to cover rent on a 1-bedroom apartment in a rough neighborhood. My credit score? Below 600. If you had looked at me then, you'd have thought I was 1 paycheck away from disaster. And you would have been right. But in those long nights, something clicked. I remember one ride in particular. This older man got into my car, wearing an expensive suit. He started talking about real estate, about flipping houses, about 1031 exchanges and rental income. I had no idea what those words meant, but I listened, and something in me woke up. After he left, I went home and stayed up all night watching YouTube videos about real estate investing. I read books I couldn't afford. I literally borrowed them from the library, took notes, and returned them. I learned about FHA loans, about wholesaling, about buying distressed properties at foreclosure auctions. The next year, I took every extra dollar from my Uber driving and warehouse shifts and scraped together a down payment on my first house. It wasn't much, an old 2-bedroom fixer-upper that smelled like mold, but I saw potential. I spent months fixing it myself. I learned to tile by watching tutorials. I patched drywall, painted walls, replaced cabinets. I didn't sleep much, but when I finally rented it out, I felt something I'd never felt before: power. I suddenly had cash flow. Not much, maybe $200 a month after expenses. But it was the first time in my life I wasn't just surviving. I was building. I repeated the process. Bought another house, then another. Some I sold, some I held. By the time my sister was making fun of me for being broke, I already had 6 rental properties under my name. Of course, I didn't tell anyone. Why would I? My family never supported me anyway. They mocked me when I struggled, ignored me when I succeeded, so I kept it private. To them, I was still just marked a failure. But behind the scenes, I was building an empire. Over the years, I learned how to play the long game. I refinanced properties, rolled profits into new deals, diversified into commercial spaces. And then came the biggest move: an apartment complex just outside Dallas. It was a nightmare property: bad tenants, broken plumbing, lawsuits with the HOA. Everyone else ran away. I ran toward it. I put everything I had into that deal. And for a while, I thought I'd made the biggest mistake of my life. But slowly, I turned it around. Cleaned up the management, upgraded units, negotiated with the HOA. 3 years later, that nightmare was valued at triple what I paid. I sold it and cleared over $1 million in profit. That was the turning point. From then on, I wasn't just investing, I was thriving. I set up an LLC, got serious about asset protection, even established a trust. My portfolio grew, and while my family thought I was scraping by, I was quietly worth over $8 million. I never flaunted it. I still drove a beat-up Ford truck. I still wore the same worn-out jeans. I didn't want their attention, their fake praise. I wanted peace. But here's the thing: you can hide wealth, but you can't hide confidence forever. I started walking differently, carrying myself differently. And that's when Karen started noticing something. She once asked me, "How can you afford to keep paying your rent if you're always broke?" I just shrugged, let her believe whatever she wanted. What she didn't know was that I owned the very building she thought I was renting from. Every month when she looked down on me for barely scraping by, she didn't realize her own best friend was writing me a rent check. That's the irony, isn't it? People judge you by appearances, never knowing the truth. But I kept my mouth shut because I knew one day the truth would come out, and when it did, it would hit harder than anything I could say. And that day finally came when Mom passed away. That's when a reading was scheduled, the gathering where Karen, my cousins, and the rest of the family sat around acting like vultures waiting to divide the estate. They looked at me like I didn't matter, like I should be grateful for scraps. What they didn't know was that I didn't need Mom's money. I didn't need a single dollar from that inheritance. In fact, I could buy every single one of them out if I wanted to. And that's when the plan started forming in my head. I wasn't just going to stand there and take their humiliation. I was going to show them who I really was. Because all those years of pain, of being underestimated, of being mocked, they weren't for nothing. They were fuel. And now, finally, it was my turn to flip the script. They thought they had power over me. They thought I was weak, but they had no idea. The empire I built in silence was about to speak louder than all of them combined. I remember sitting in that stuffy lawyer's office. Mom's was spread out on the oak table like some holy document. The air was heavy, everyone leaning forward as if waiting for their lottery numbers to be called. Karen had that smug smile plastered across her face, the kind of smile that made you want to wipe it off with one good sentence. The lawyer cleared his throat and started reading. "To my daughter Karen, I leave the family jewelry collection and the contents of the safety deposit box." Karen's eyes sparkled. She shot me a glance, like she was saying, "See? Mom always loved me more." Then came the words everyone had been waiting for. "And to my son, Mark." The lawyer paused, shuffled his papers. Karen leaned back in her chair, arms crossed, waiting for the punchline. "I leave the remaining balance of my checking account, estimated at around $1,200. The room went silent. I swear I heard my uncle cough just to fill the air. Karen almost choked, trying to hold back her laugh. But then she let it out, a loud snort that echoed in the room. Wow, she said, not even bothering to whisper. $1,200. That should really help you pay rent, huh, Mark? Everyone chuckled. My cousin smirked. My aunt shook her head like she pitied me. I sat there, calm, because this was the moment I had been waiting for. I leaned back, folded my hands, and smiled. That's fine, I said. I didn't expect anything more. Karen tilted her head. Of course you didn't. You never had expectations. You never accomplished anything. That's when I stood up. Slowly, deliberately. I could feel every eye on me. You know, Karen, I said, you're right. I don't need Mom's money. I don't need any of this. She laughed. Yeah, because you're broke. You've always been broke. I took a breath, and then I dropped the bomb. Actually, I own 12 rental properties across Dallas, 3 commercial spaces. And last year, I sold an apartment complex for just over $3 million in profit. The laughter stopped. Dead silence. My cousins blinked like they'd just seen a ghost. My aunt dropped her pen. And Karen, her smile froze, like her face couldn't decide whether to laugh or cry. What are you talking about? She stammered. I'm talking about the empire I built while you were busy gossiping about me. I'm talking about the LLCs I manage, the trust one set up, the assets that put me at a net worth of over $8 million. The lawyer raised his eyebrows, clearly impressed. And you know what's funny? I continued, my voice steady, rising. While you mocked me for being a failure, I was the one cashing your best friend's rent checks. Yeah, Karen. She lives in one of my properties. Her face turned crimson. You're lying. I pulled out my phone, opened a document, and slid across the table. The deed to the apartment complex. The rental agreements. All under my LLC's name. Her eyes scanned the page, desperate for a loophole. There wasn't one. The silence in that room was the sweetest sound I've ever heard. And then I twisted the knife. You see, I never needed Mom's inheritance. I came here today out of respect. But since you're so obsessed with money, let me give you some free advice. Don't spend the jewelry too fast, because once that safety deposit box is empty, you're back to square one. Meanwhile, I'll still be collecting rent every month. My uncle chuckled under his breath. My cousins looked at me differently, like they were seeing me for the first time. And Karen? She looked like someone had just ripped the floor out from under her. She tried to recover. Well, if that's true, why didn't you ever say anything? Why pretend to be broke all these years? I leaned forward, lowering my voice, because I wanted to see who really respected me, who valued me for who I am, not for what I own. And now I know. That hit her harder than the numbers ever could. The lawyer cleared his throat, tried to move on, but the atmosphere had shifted completely. The power was no longer in Karen's hands. It was in mine. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. My calmness was louder than any outburst. That's the thing about true power. It doesn't have to shout. As we wrapped up, Karen avoided my eyes. She fumbled with her purse, her hands shaking. For the first time in my life, I saw fear in her, not because I threatened her, but because she realized the truth. I wasn't the weak brother she could step on. I was the one who could buy and sell her 10 times over. When we walked out into the Texas sun, my cousin whispered to me, "Man, you really showed her." I just smiled. She showed herself. And deep down, I knew this was only the beginning. Because exposing Karen wasn't just about money. It was about reclaiming my dignity. About proving that no matter how much people try to write you off, the truth will always surface. That day, in that lawyer's office, I flipped the script. The failure they mocked became the man they feared. And Karen? She finally realized the game was over. I'll never forget the look on Karen's face as we walked out of that office. The woman who strutted in like a queen had shrunk into herself, clutching her purse as if it could shield her from the truth. For once, she had nothing smart to say. No insults. No fake laughs. Just silence. But life has a way of finishing what you start. See, exposing Karen in that room wasn't the end. It was only the beginning of her downfall. A week later, I got a call from the same lawyer, Mark. He said, "There's something Karen overlooked. The jewelry she inherited? Most of it was appraised decades ago. Turns out, after taxes and fees, the resale value won't even scratch the surface of what she thinks." I chuckled. Of course. Karen had built her whole ego on shiny rocks, not realizing they weren't worth much in today's market. Meanwhile, every month I had tenants wire me thousands in rent, steady as clockwork. The next blow came at Thanksgiving. Our family gathered at Uncle Ray's place, the first holiday without Mom. It was already tense, everyone wondering if Karen would show her face. And she did, dressed to the nines, dripping in pearls from the jewelry box. She tried to play her usual role, bragging about Mom's precious heirlooms. But when my uncle asked if she'd managed to sell anything, her smile cracked. She admitted that no buyer would pay even half of what she expected. The room went quiet. Then someone muttered, "Should have listened to Mark." That one comment destroyed her act. Karen turned red, snapped at everyone, and stormed out. On the way, she brushed past me, muttering, "You think you won, but this isn't over." Except it was. Because from that day forward, nobody in the family looked at her the same. The respect she craved evaporated. She wasn't the golden child anymore. She was the punchline. As for me, I didn't have to lift a finger. I just kept building, kept moving forward. My properties expanded. My portfolio grew. And every so often, I'd hear through the grapevine about Karen struggling to pay off credit cards or fighting with her husband over money. Justice didn't come in one big explosion. It came like waves, steady and undeniable. Each wave chipped away at the pedestal she'd built for herself, until there was nothing left but sand. And you know what? I didn't even feel the need to gloat. My victory wasn't in her humiliation. It was in knowing that the truth had finally been revealed, that no amount of lies or insults could erase what I'd built with my own two hands. Looking back, I realized this whole ordeal wasn't just about inheritance, or even about Karen. It was about identity. For years, I let her define me. I let her words convince me I was less than, that I didn't measure up. And maybe some of you out there have felt the same. Maybe you've been the sibling who was always underestimated, the co-worker dismissed in meetings, the parent your own kids didn't respect. It cuts deep, doesn't it? You start to wonder if maybe they're right. But here's the truth I had to learn the hard way. Other people's opinions don't pay your bills. Their approval doesn't build your future. And their disrespect only has power if you accept it. Karen thought Mom's was the final word on my worth. But worth isn't written on paper. It's written in the choices you make every single day. While she was laughing at me, I was investing. While she was flashing jewelry, I was signing deeds. While she was chasing status, I was building security. And that's the lesson I want you to walk away with. Quiet work speaks louder than loud mouths. Success doesn't need applause. It just needs consistency. So if you've ever been mocked, underestimated, or cut out, well, remember this. Your story isn't over. The inheritance you build for yourself will outlast any piece of paper in a lawyer's office. Mom might have left Karen the jewelry, but I built the kind of wealth and dignity no one can take away. And in the end, that's the real legacy. As I left that Thanksgiving dinner, I thought about Mom. I think she knew what she was doing, leaving me only $1,200. Maybe she wanted to see if I'd crumble, or if I'd prove myself without her help. Either way, I had my answer. And Karen? She had hers too. Because no matter how much she tried to rewrite my story, the truth stood taller than her lies. And the best revenge wasn't the millions in my account. It was the peace in my heart, knowing I'd finally broken free of her shadow. If this story hit home for you, don't forget to subscribe. More stories of justice, survival, and sweet revenge are waiting for you here.